Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. How much of a weasel you have to be not to mention this crime, or at least the perpetrators of this crime? And I'm talking about the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombardments. I'm talking about the atomic bombs, obviously not the regular conventional weapons. Yesterday, on the 6th of August, it's an anniversary, or how you want to call it, commemoration of the first atomic bomb dropped. And it was by the United States in 1945 over the city of Hiroshima. And then on the 9th, it was the Nagasaki, the second one. And after a week or so, the Japanese leadership decided to surrender unconditionally. That means pants down, bent over, anytime, anyhow, anywhere, however you want it. Okay, so the problem is that was done by the United States of America, and I think that was not okay. There were civilians bombarded. And they tried to show their might. They say, well, that finished, closed, ended the war. That's like saying the Russians right now use the same logic in ending the Ukraine war. Doing the same thing? I don't think so. So anyway, let's look at how the Japanese government nowadays, which I think Japan has been under the U.S. occupation since then, how the current Japanese leadership and elites or politicians, when they talk about the Hiroshima and Nagasaki tragedies, they do not mention United States of America. But they mention Russia. They mention Russia as a threat, but they don't mention United States as the ones that already raped them 2 times. Well, that's a new level of weaselship, I think. They've been doing this, I think, from time. I don't think they ever attacked or called, these guys where the Americans dropped the bomb over us, and it was a bad thing. I don't think they ever said anything like that, which is the truth. Isn't it truth? The truth, yeah. Is it truth or is it not? I think it is, but they don't dare. You can say, well, it's a diplomatic. It's not diplomatic. The Americans have troops on your territory. You don't have troops on U.S. territory. So there's no alliance here. We know who's who and what's what. We know who the subordinate is and we know who the boss is. We know who wrote your constitution, or at least sent you back to bring the constitution so we can look over. And they said, yeah, I think it's okay. And we missed a few points from your constitution, like the right to bear arms, okay, that we have in the constitution. We said, you don't need it. I don't think they have over there enshrined in their constitution the freedom of speech and the media and all that. I don't know about that one. But I know they don't have the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution enshrined somewhere over there in their Constitution. Too much for freedom and democracy. So let's look at this article coming from, obviously, the Russians, who are upset that their name was mentioned by the weasels in Japan, but the U.S. was left out. Unbelievable. It's like you accuse someone in the neighborhood of being a rapist, but you don't mention the rapist who raped your mother 2 times. But hey, I think that might be a rapist around here. That's a threat of rape here in the neighborhood. When your mom was raped 2 times by that particular guy, that right now is at your table, drinks your wine, and anyway, let's move on. I'm getting too riled up. So this is from August 6th, 2023. Japan ignores U.S. role on Hiroshima bombing anniversary. Tokyo opted to highlight, and I'm quoting, Russia's nuclear threat, end quote, instead of condemning those responsible for leveling the city in 1945. Now that's mental gymnastics right here. Now, I am familiar with the Japanese culture, and I know that the Japanese used to be very, very proud and very courageous. But after 1945, I think they failed, in my assessment, my humble assessment, they failed to show those characteristics anymore. They became weak, and they became afraid to even say that they have anything to say in this world. They just got under a shell. The United States put that shell in a box, closed the box, locked it, and threw the key away. And Japan is right there, tries to go out right now, but it picks its fights. Why? Because right now it seems like they're maneuvered by the Americans to poke the Chinese, poke the Russians, not the North Koreans yet, but they are at it too. A little bit. The woodchuck is irritated already. So let's see how these guys are using, as I said, mental gymnastics. Japanese officials have marked the 78th anniversary of the nuclear bombing of Hiroshima without naming the US as the country responsible. Despite Washington carrying out the only two offensive uses of nuclear weapons in history, they choose instead to condemn Russia for its supposed quote-unquote nuclear threat. Yes, that was an offensive use because the Japanese were in the cords, to put it that way. And it was unnecessary, but hey, they wanted to use it, they use it. What are you going to do? You have 78 years to tell me, right here. 78 years. And I'm quoting, Japan, as the only nation to have suffered atomic bombings in war, will continue efforts towards a nuclear-free world, end quote. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said in a speech on Sunday, I think he's still in the 20% approval rating. That's how democracy works. You don't have imperium to ability to lead and in charge, but you are still the prime minister. The path to such a world is becoming, and I'm quoting, increasingly difficult because of deepening divisions in the international community over nuclear disarmament and Russia's nuclear threat. End quote, he added. You will never get the Kuril Islands if Russia stays as it is. While maintaining that the, and I'm quoting, devastation brought to Hiroshima and Nagasaki by nuclear weapons can never be repeated. You get in the war with the United States and you'll see. End quote. You'll see if this is true. Can never be. That's wishful thinking, I hope. But some people can anyway. He still refrained from naming those responsible for the attacks in the first place. A U.S. Army Air Force bomber dropped an atomic bomb over Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, killing up to 126,000 people, most of them civilians. Isn't that a war crime? Another nuclear bomb was detonated over the city of Nagasaki on August 9, killing up to 80,000 people, almost all of whom were civilians. Japan surrendered to the Allied powers a week later, bringing the Second World War to a close. In his speech on Sunday, Hiroshima Mayor Kazumi Matsui also avoided naming the perpetrator of the bombing. Matsui called on world leaders to quote-unquote confront the reality of nuclear threats now being voiced by certain policymakers, end quote, another apparent reference to Russia. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres remarked that, and I'm quoting, a nuclear weapon incinerated Hiroshima without mentioning who dropped the device. And I'm quoting again by Gutierrez Weasel. And some countries are recklessly rattling the nuclear saber once again, threatening to use those tools of annihilation, end quote, he added, without elaborating further. Japan has been an ally of the US since American forces occupied its territory and wrote its constitution in the aftermath of the nuclear bombings. Kishida has imposed sanctions on Moscow and, alongside the other G7 leaders, accused the Kremlin of, and I'm quoting, irresponsible nuclear rhetoric and undermining of arms control regimes. End quote. Unlike US nuclear doctrine, which allows for a nuclear first strike, and I'm quoting, to defend the vital interests of the United States or its allies and partners, end quote, Russia's nuclear strategy permits the use of atomic weapons only in the event of a first nuclear strike on its territory, or if the existence of the Russian state is threatened by either nuclear or conventional weapons. Citing Ukraine's repeated threats against nuclear power plant on Russian territory, Moscow accused the West last month of enabling and according nuclear terrorism. Well, if you are a little bit familiar with the first atomic bomb and the second one, the Americans purposely detonated the atomic bomb over the city to create a bigger destruction. So they didn't land it. They did, I think it was 600, I can't remember, it was 600 feet, 600 meters, something like that. So the whole, how do you call it? I can't remember the name of it right now. The air produced by this would have go down and then to the side and create more destruction. So it was all calculated to create destruction. So how would you call that? Oh, congratulations, Japan. Congratulations. Now, I was not proud when the Romanians were avoiding telling the truth. The Romanian politicians. I always disliked that. I thought we were weasels. Now I see the Japanese continuing to be weasels. Sorry. Actions speak louder than words. In this case, there's no words. You're afraid to say as it is. Why? Because the perpetrator will feel I don't know, threatened or something, or upset. Imagine that this is in real life. I gave you the example with neighborhood and with your mom or whomever. It's unbelievable. Doesn't make logical sense, and you could be considered a weasel, or not your mom, but a wife, a family member, let's put it this way. Raped 2 times. Don't mention the name of that guy, but mention the one that is allegedly wanted to do the same thing. You can't make shit up. Don't give me, oh, you can't change the past, you can change the future, blah, 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 blah. You would not think the same way if that would have happened 2 times to one of your family members. I guarantee you that. You will want that person to be hanged by its balls, or his balls, in the market square, and use a BB gun every 3 seconds to hit him in the balls. Anyway, thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.